So in this stream, we're going to focus a lot on how annotating can help you on the AP Lit exam. So we'll have a specific poetry prompt, one of the prompts that I know is commonly used. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll break down what it means to annotate, and we'll practice some annotations, and then we'll develop a way so that you can use your annotations for support for your FRQ. So I know often students will see a prompt or a practice FRQ, and a teacher may say, hey, I want you to annotate this. Well, what is it that the teacher really wants to see, and how does all of that transfer to an FRQ? So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so which picture symbolizes how your paper looks when your teacher asks you to annotate? So is it this one where you see a lot of, highlighting, a lot of color, a lot of writing, it's all over the place? Or is it like the one on the right where the teacher hands you the prompt and says, I want you to annotate this, and it may be blank? So which one best symbolizes how your paper looks when a teacher asks you to annotate? Okay, I see several or a couple of people have on the left, theirs look a little bit like this. And I have someone who says on the right, which I understand because sometimes we need that support. What is it? What does it mean to annotate? Okay, borderline to the left. Okay, very good. And I see the one on the left often where students are just writing everything. They're writing all over it because teachers will say, well, I just need, and I've been guilty of that. I'll say, well, just mark up the poem. But what do you do with the marks? What do you do with it? All right, so we'll focus on what is annotating. So why do we annotate, and how can annotating help me with the AP Lit FRQ? So what is annotating to you? Will someone just chat me in a couple of words? What is annotating? What do you think about when you think about the word annotating? In 2 or 3 words, what is annotating? Writing your thoughts down. Okay, that's a good one. Making my thoughts visible and related to the text. Very good. So some notes to understand. Okay, taking notes, making connections. That's what annotating is. Analyzing what the author is trying to say. Very good, very good. Oh, this is a sharp group. You guys know all of this. Okay, to supply critical and explanatory notes. Very good, very good. All good definitions. So if you've heard closed reading, that's a term that we use often in the classroom, teachers. We're going to close read this passage or close read this poem. That's used synonymously with annotating. Any action that causes an interaction with the text. So anything with the text, whether it's drawing, writing on the text, any of that, highlighting, that causes you to interact with the text. And I will share some things that I know I've seen students do, which I didn't think was effective, but turns out it was effective for them. And I think someone else responded that, someone in the chat responded it provides critical and explanatory notes on a text. So very good. That is what annotating means. All right. And if you look at Mr. Sheldon, he says annotating is thinking on paper, and I agree. All right. So the goals for this session today is to help you make sense of your annotation. So your paper can go from looking like the left, which we're not so sure what to do with that, to looking like on the right, where it's a little more organized. We can see more explanations. We can see possibly the soapstone, where we look at the purpose and subject and tone and all of that. So we'll talk a little bit about how to make this doable. All right, so why do we annotate? We annotate to help with understanding, to recall reactions to the text. It helps you understand key vocabulary, helps you make connections. So all of you, you all nailed this when I asked for your chat responses. It also helps clarify misconceptions about the text. And I like to tell stories, but there is one poem that I always use. And initially, students always feel like they know what the poem is about until we practice annotating. But they always tell me it's a trick. So I didn't use that poem with this session. We're going to use one that's pretty, clear and concise, and we can get through the session. Okay, so how do you annotate? So what are some ways that you annotate when you're writing? You can use the margins. So on the paper, you have outsides, write little notes on the margin. I've seen students do that. You have to write small. You can't get a lot on information on there unless you're writing on a piece of paper where the prompt or the poem is centered. So that's a good way to use your margins, is to annotate. Okay, highlighters, color coding, an emotional response to the text. So I have mixed feelings about color highlighting. So I've told students highlighting only shows me that you know how to color. What are you doing with the color? So always, if you highlight, just use a mix of highlighting and writing on the text. Okay, because you don't want to get in the habit of highlighting and color coding, and then you've forgotten what you highlighted. You don't know why you highlighted, and then you just have you have a masterpiece of minimalism because it doesn't make sense. All right, so by hand, software, Post-its. Now this is good if you're annotating in a book and you have to return the novel, then you can, I've seen students use Post-its a lot. Not really necessary when you're annotating a specific prompt for the AP exam, so you don't really need Post-its. One thing that is common through all of these techniques is to write. Even if you color code, emotional responses, write a color key so that you know what each color stands for. Is that a lot of work? It's some work, but it's effective work that will help you with the AP prompt. So what else can you do, or what's most common when you're annotating? Now, these things will help your teacher, or will show your teacher that you're actually paying attention and you're actually putting forth an effort. So I put the most common types of annotations. So circling the important words. When I annotate, if it's something that I don't know the meaning to, I put little question marks. I'll circle the word, question mark it, or I may circle a word and put a synonym with it. So a word that's associated with the word that's in the poem. Okay, something, mark funny ideas. So if there's something that's funny, just mark LOL, or you can put a happy face emoji. So that always stands out. Same thing, same goes for if it is a negative or a sad emotion connected with the words that you're reading. I'll put sad faces, or tell my students, if you don't want to write, just put emojis. You can put happy faces, sad faces, or something like that. Something so that you're connected with the section of the text. All right, new ideas, marking new ideas. So I see some responses. Very good. So you've heard that technique of using the emojis. Some students I know with AP Lit, you're rushing against the clock and you're trying to annotate as quickly as you can, but you want to make sure you understand the text. So emojis work well. So new ideas, I call those aha moments. So if there's something that you're like, oh, that's really deep, or I didn't expect that, or something that maybe resonated with you, a little asterisk or a star, that's something that's new. Okay. Also, what happened? I think we had something to happen. Okay, no, there are no rules against writing notes on the worksheet. So that was a question I wanted to answer. And now my presentation is mark any concepts or words, or mark any sad emotions. So anything that stands out that's a bit sad, like I said, any emotions that connect to the text, those are things that you should mark. Anything that's unfamiliar, anything that's new. Draw arrows to make connections. Often in poetry, you may have one stanza that refers back to the previous stanza, or some type of tone shift. So make sure you draw arrows and use that to refer to the text. So are there any types of common annotations that I may have left out that you all can think of that your teachers may have told you to use? Anything that stands out? If you want to chat me some examples that may stand out, you can. So we have circling important words, marking funny ideas, marking new ideas, any unclear concepts. I gave you emojis, stars, question marks, exclamation marks, and arrows. Is there anything that I may have missed that you guys can think of for annotating? Santiago or Jane or Dakota, any of those? Anything else? Okay. If not, you can always chat those later. Okay, mark the title. Ah, that's a good one, Julia. Marking the title. That often there's something that gives away the meaning of the poem in the title. You always want to make sure you start with the title as well. So write out anything. You can even put the emojis on the title if there's an emotional connection or something like that. So very good. All right, so let's practice. So the poem I'm using is from the 2004 Poetry FRQ. It's a comparison and contrast. Okay, Dakota, thank you. So pay attention to literary devices. Very good. Literary devices are important when you're annotating. You want to make sure you mark those as well. Often those give us hints of what the tone is like or what the mood or the meaning or the purpose of the piece. So make sure you annotate that as well. So let's move on to some practice. We're going to practice. We're going to look at one of the prompts. And how many of you have seen this maybe in your AP Lit class? A comparison of contrast. It's Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost, Accustomed to the Dark and Acquainted with the Night. These are two. It's from the 2004. It's one of the release prompts. So this is one that's pretty common, but I was told that, okay, I have not, you're reading the Iliad. Okay, that's totally fine. Once you all start practicing poetry, this may be a prompt that you become familiar with. So you'll already know how to annotate it. But I was told that the College Board will not, I don't think they will give comparison and contrast prompts anytime soon. That was one, I think one coming from one of the chief reader reports, that this is not a prompt that you will see regularly, a compare and contrast. But I think it's good for annotating because we have two short pieces to work with. So I decided to work with this one. So hopefully it's helpful. All right, so first thing we want to do is annotate the prompt. And if you look, I have the poems below are concerned with darkness and night. So this stands out to me, so I circle it. And then read each poem carefully. Then in a well-written essay, compare and contrast the poems, analyzing the significance of dark or night in each. And in your essay, consider elements such as point of view, imagery, and structure. Okay, so let's look at my annotations of the actual prompt. I circled darkness and night because that is important. I know that that's what I'm focused on. And then compare and contrast. So I know that that's a skill that I've learned. Teachers before my AP Lit class have taught me how to structure a compare or contrast. So I mark that because I don't want to be confused and go down a rabbit hole writing a different type of response when the prompt clearly asks me to compare and contrast. Now, analyzing the significance of dark or night in each. I've already circled that, so I know that I don't necessarily need to focus it again. I'm in a time crunch. I just want to keep writing or annotating so that I can write. In your essay, consider elements such as number one, point of view. And what I do is with the prompts, usually the prompts will outline exactly what you need to write, what you need to write about. So I annotate number one, point of view, number two, imagery, and number three, structure. Okay, so I think looking at it that way, I already outlined what my essay needs to focus on. So give me a thumbs up if what I've said made sense so far. The annotating and numbering the devices 1, 2, and 3. If that makes sense, give me a thumbs up. If not so much, thumbs down, and I can go over that again. So I see one thumbs up, couple of thumbs up, few thumbs up. Great. Okay. So any more thumbs up? Any thumbs down? Thumbs up? Okay, thumbs up. Cool. All right. So I'm going to keep going. Now, first, number one, the way that I annotated this one, I thought it would make sense if I annotated each section separately. So point of view, number one. So what I annotated was we grow accustomed. Okay, and two things circled. We refers to people as a whole. So I'm thinking, okay, this is inclusive, people. And accustomed, when you think about the word accustomed, what do you think about? The word accustomed. That makes that gives a certain connotation, a specific connotation with the custom. Used to, right, Jane, used to. Being used to something. So you're in the habit of something. So for here, we grow accustomed to the dark. And I noticed that dark is capitalized, but I want to address that here. I'm just focusing on point of view. All right, so growing accustomed also, if you look, I'm using my arrows. I'm pointing to find solace with the night. So that means I'm pretty comfortable with it being nighttime. So adjusting to darkness. So I've annotated here in the second stanza, a moment we uncertain step for newness in the night, then fit our vision to the dark. What does that mean, to fit your vision to the dark? What does that mean? Has anyone ever walked into a dark room and you're there for a long time and you can your mind starts to create those shapes and structures of what's there? So that's an example of adjusting to darkness. So you're setting your vision to the dark. It's no longer frightening because you can actually see it. Okay, so that's what I've annotated because I'm thinking, okay, I'm under a time crunch. I only have 40 minutes. So I've annotated this because this supports the point of view. So number one is point of view. That's all I'm looking at. So if you look to the second poem, Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost, I've circled, I have been acquainted. I have been one acquainted. So that's what I circled. And the first thing I notice is I is singular. That's different from accustomed to the dark, because it's inclusive with the we. So now I have singular point of view and plural. Also, word choice, acquainted. Now, what do you think about when you think about the word acquainted? What comes to mind? When you say acquainted, it's a little different. To be familiar with, yeah, familiar. Is it as close to being accustomed to something? If you're acquainted, is that the close? No, you're right. No, it's not. It's not. So you're barely exposed to the night. And that comes with a different perception or point of view. So let's look through this and see what else is said about being acquainted with the night. Okay, walked in the rain. Okay, I have outwalked the furthest city light. So would you say that's positive or negative so far? Those are you. Negative, okay. And okay, let's look at the second stanza. I have looked down the saddest city lane. Now, if I look back at the first poem, she talks about, or the speaker addresses, fitting your vision to the dark and meet the road erect. So that means if you're erect, that means you're standing straight, you're walking bravely, you've become accustomed to the night or to the dark. But if I look here on this poem, it says, I've looked down the saddest street and I've dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. Are these two the same, would you say? Are they the same? No, they are not. So this tone, the word choice, is more sad and depressing. Okay, so we have an idea of the points of view. We know we have one that's a little more brave, the bravest, grew up a little more brave, a little more accustomed, than one that's not so much, you're barely exposed to the night. So let's see what else we can annotate with imagery. Let's move on. All right, so number 2. Can everyone see this clearly? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? The annotations? Kind of. Okay. Okay. So with the annotations, let me go back to this one. All right. With these, let's see if I can, what about now? Is that a little better? Give me a thumbs up if you can see that better. Okay. All right, so what I have with this screenshot of the poem, I highlighted number 1, the point of view, yellow. So I'll give it a second. I'll give the screen a second so that it can focus for you all, and just let me know if you can see it. How is that? I hear some. Okay, I see a few chats that's saying that you can see it. No, so can you see the pink and the yellow? Can you see the pink? Okay, very good. I'm getting thumbs up, so I'm going to keep going. So if you notice, I highlighted point of view yellow. So I'm using my highlighting. I'm using some different techniques so you can see how it looks and how it can be effective. So the next device or next thing I'm going to focus on is imagery. And we know from looking at both of these poems already that we have a lot of imagery. So I numbered imagery number 2, and it's pink, so I'm going to the passage. As when the neighbor holds the lamp, that gives me a visualization, okay? Adjusting the vision to the dark and meet the road erect. These are all things in pink that I know I can visualize. The bravest grope a little. If you think about that, if you're in a room and it's dark, you're kind of using your hands, you're trying to steady yourself and trying to feel your way. Okay, so I highlight that as in pink because I know it lends to imagery. And still in life steps almost straight. So I'm still in that part. And this stanza, darkness alters and life steps almost straight. I know that I can actually visualize this. So this is imagery. And then I look at the second poem, Furthest City Light. I annotate that and I highlight that and I write darkest times and places. Okay, the furthest city light. So I know that's what frost means. So I've highlighted it because I know it supports imagery, and I've written on the side the darkest times and places. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so what I highlight is the text evidence, and what I write will be my commentary. So in the paragraphs, you need your text evidence and you need some commentary to support that text evidence. So I'm highlighting the text evidence, but what will I say? What will I use? How will I explain it? That's what I actually write. And I still use my arrows. Okay, I'm still using my arrows. I'm circling important words and I'm highlighting. Okay, so I'm moving on. And I see with some stanzas, you may have devices that actually overlap. So sad and depressing, we know that this supports our point of view, but if we look in the same stanza, stopped, the sound of feet, if you think about it, someone who's walking down maybe a dark street or someone who's in an unfamiliar place and you're walking, you hear that sound louder and louder. So that supports that auditory imagery. So that's something that you can annotate. The reason I didn't highlight it is because it's in the same stanza and I didn't want to become confused. Okay, so look at the next line, far away and interrupted cry. If you think about that, that's something you can that supports imagery as well. Okay, and I look at the last stanza, and further still at an unearthly height, one illuminary clock against the sky. So I think about that, that's the moon. So I'm associating those words. I didn't write it, but I know all of this supports imagery and supports imagery. So all the pink, that's what we want to use as our text evidence. Okay, so just to check, thumbs up if you understand the first and second devices that we've annotated, down, thumbs down if you're still a little iffy on it. So send me a chat, thumbs up if you understand. Okay, I see one thumbs up. Okay, any more thumbs up if you understand? Okay, now, so we have 1, point of view, 2, imagery, and 3, structure. So let's see what we can annotate with structure. Okay, so I'm waiting, make sure it's focused. Now, structure is a little tricky sometimes, but it's okay. We're gonna look at it. Can everyone see it? Thumbs up if you can see it, or chat me yes if you can see the poem. Can everyone see the 3? Okay, is it focusing for you all? Let's see. All right, so I'm getting some responses that it's focusing, and we're still waiting. So if you can see it, just give me a thumbs up so we can start with the last device that we've annotated. Okay, very good. So I'm getting some, yes, we can see it. All right, so now just to recap, I've annotated yellow for point of view, and I've annotated pink for imagery. And now I want to look at structure. So I've used the color orange for structure. And then I want to see, well, I can see that they're different, but I want to specifically write how it's different. So I look at first the random capitalizations that we know are pretty common with Emily Dickinson. So you look at those words as if they are proper nouns. So that may be something I write. Okay, proper noun. Okay. And I'm look at these hyphens. You see that? What type of impression or what does that make you think about when you have stanzas that have hyphens in the middle? Anyone? Interrupted or ended quickly, almost a sense of abandonment. So I will write abandonment on the side. Okay. So, and I'm still working on structure. Okay. So once I'm in the second stanza, for newness of the night, then fit our vision to the dark and meet the road erect. So I look here between these two stanzas and I notice I have a shift. So I shift from being uncertain to I'm pretty stable. I'm stable. Some people may grope around or to get their standing or get their security, but it's pretty stable. So as part of structure, I annotate that there is a shift from uncertainty to stability. But I annotate more that I see multiple breaks in this poem. And because it's not uniformed, then I know that it is a free verse poem. So what do you think about free verse poems? When you read a free verse and you think about the denotation, the definition, what else do you associate with the free verse poem? Anyone? Free verse poems, have you all had to write those or have you studied any free verse poems? Well, free verse, if you've had to study them, you know they don't follow any distinctive pattern of rhyme or rhythm. So there is no rhythm, right? There is no rhythm, so it's unstable. So this unstableness is a part of structure, and if you think about it, it fits this poem appropriately. Okay. Now let's look at a much different poem. And I didn't highlight anything, but at the bottom, so it's structured rhyme. It's a structured rhyme scheme. So structured rhyme scheme, that means things don't change much. So it's stable. Stable. It suggests that the speaker is, there's some stability with the sadness, like it's on repeat and there's no breaking from the sadness. So we have a clear or a basic understanding. Yes, it is good to write some questions down when you're annotating. And if it's something you want to ask, maybe you're annotating in a group or you're annotating with your teacher, maybe something you're not clear about, and you want to ask your teacher or ask a partner in the class, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Does that make sense, Rebecca? You're welcome. Okay, any questions so far about this annotation? I'm feeling more solid that I have point of view. I know that's in yellow. Number 2, I have pink, my pink text evidence to support imagery. And then I have some things, the shift and stability, the frequent breaks, the random capitalizations, a free verse poem, and then for accustomed, for Emily Dickinson's poem, and then I look at acquainted, I'm looking for structure. I know I have a structured poem with a structured rhyme scheme, and I know it suggests stability. So I feel a little more comfortable that I have these 3 and I've annotated them. Now, is there anything that I may have forgotten to annotate that you all can tell me or suggest? Any suggestions that I may have forgotten if you're looking at these 2? Well, we've said that Dickinson has capitalized dark, darkness, the bravest as if they are proper nouns. So she personifies these objects. Okay, that's something that we can use for point of view or imagery. Let's see. All right, so again, just to recap, I have highlighted my text evidence. I've used 3 different colors. That was enough, and I did it so that you all could actually visualize that. And text evidence is what's highlighted, and then my commentary, or what I say, or what I write about that text evidence, is what's annotated or what's written in the margins or between the poems. So this helps me with my commentary, the words on the sides and the margins, and the highlighting and circling and writing in the middle on the poems helps me with my text evidence. So if you understand everything we've gone over so far, give me a thumbs up. That's a good question. One question is, how can you tell if you have enough annotated, and when should you stop writing? I've seen students annotate a lot, but they won't necessarily know how to use that to support your paragraphs. I can tell you, and I've seen students that annotate maybe a medium amount like this, and they know exactly how to structure their essay. I can tell you it's more about making the argument. So sometimes a lot of annotation doesn't really help you. And if you're working on the AP exam, you only want to spend 7 minutes roughly annotating the passage. So annotate just enough so that you've understood the devices asked and the prompt. Does that make sense? So annotate until you feel comfortable that you've supported, very good, that you've supported what's asked in the prompt. Okay, so point of view, imagery, and structure, those were the 3 that we were asked about. And you learned some techniques or what to do to support that essay. Do you have any questions? I think I've answered that one. How can you tell if you have enough information and you can stop annotating? So you annotate until you have enough to support the 3 paragraphs in your body. So again, if your teacher has told you, okay, you need to have at least 3 examples from the text, if you count, I think we have 3, 1, 2, and 3. And then for imagery, at least 3, 1, 2, and 3. This strategy applies when annotating anything, a passage or poetry. I use it for passages, the prose, and poetry. It works. Even if you, now one thing I did in the past that I didn't do here was I numbered, I did a little here. I put number 1 above the yellow for point of view, number 1 for point of view, number 1, number 1, number 1. So I would number the text evidence that supports each device that I'm asked to write about. So if you don't have highlighters, you could totally number the text evidence. As long as it's neat, if you look at this, it looks a little different from the first example that I showed you where the annotation was messy. We didn't really know what everything was, but here it's a little more organized, and you have the color coding, and you have understandable writing in the margins. So that's pretty good. Do you think annotating is useful when reading on your own? Most definitely. Anytime you're reading and you want to engage with the text, especially if it's a longer piece like a novel or novella or drama, annotate when you're reading. Especially Shakespeare, because often Shakespeare leaves little hidden gems or little funny things, and sometimes you miss it if you're not annotating. The Iliad is an epic. Yes, it is. It's not, but you can still annotate it. You can still annotate in the Iliad. You can use the Post-its. So I like the Iliad. And you never know when you'll have, well, with the poetry, you never know when you have a passage that's taken from an epic poem. So very good. Any other questions for me, guys? No questions? Ask your questions. None? How many of you, thumbs up if it helped you and you feel like you can produce some annotations that are clean? You have a new system that maybe you can annotate and use it to support? Very good, your FRQs. Very good, very good. Very good. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And thank you guys for being so patient. Before you go, I just want to remind you to follow us on Fiveable at Think Fiveable on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And stay tuned for some more AP Lit and Lane annotation or presentations that are coming up. And it's been so much fun talking to you all. Thank you so much, Dakota, for saying that. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad you had a really good time. So just check back. We'll have more presentations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I wish you guys good luck on your next FRQ where you have to annotate. So wishing you guys a good evening.